Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Open Cluster Management Community Meetings. Today is November the 24th, 2023. On the agenda today, I think Qjang is going to talk a little bit about the cluster API integration. Qjang, if you're here, please feel free to take it away. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. I don't have any presentation, but just want to start a discussion about the class API and how we can integrate with class API. So, as you know, that class API is a kind of the um way that you can provision the clusters and you can scale out or scale down the clusters that has already have many different providers, including different cloud providers like AKS, EKS, GKE, and other different providers. We so there was some issues that is open before about what's the relationship between us, the OCM and the class API, how these two can be integrated. So I took a look at the class API and I'm thinking several options and I want to like to start to discuss about whether which way might be make more sense. Um, so the architecture of class API is really the similar as what um uh what OCM has. So the class API also need a kind of the management cluster. Um just give me 1 minute. Let me check if I have an environment uh to take a look. Um yeah, I have a let me share my screen.
Yep, we
Okay.
can see the screen.
Yes, thank you. So as you can see that this is a class A, so it also need a management cluster. It's just quite similar as what OCM has as a hub cluster. So in the CAPI, you can like running the cluster ed cluster ctl init command. So I have init a cloud cluster provider of EKS. So that will start some controllers like the CAPI, Bootstrap controllers, control plane controller, etc. And then you can use this to start a cluster. To start a cluster, there will be you it actually need to create several resources, and these resources can be generated using a cluster control command. So that will including a cluster resource that defines like what is a control plane implementation, the infrastructure implementation, and then there will be the specific AWS based implementations, like the control plane and the machine deployment, the infrastructure. So with all this being created on the management cluster, the the provider controller will create the cluster EKS clusters on the AWS. So talking about the integration, so I'm thinking like two options. One possible options is since after the cluster is provisioned, there is two ways. For example, in the EKS case, when the cluster is provisioned, the provider will generate a kubeconfig secret in the management cluster, and it is possible that we can use OCM to auto detect those kubeconfig and push the bootstrap secret and the class agent deployment to the certain clusters to initiate the import and registration of the cluster. That's one option. Another possible way is we could use experimental feature in the class API, which is called resource set. So we can define a set of the bootstrap secret and the class-led operator YAML files in the resource set. And then the provider will help to reconcile and sync those resources into the certain provision clusters. However, the second way will need to enable the feature gate of the resource set, which is still the experimental feature. So, and these two options all need some kind of the controllers in the OCM hub that is to automatically detect the kubeconfig or detect the clusters in the CAPI, to detect the clusters here and then initiate the bootstrapping and importing. Another possible options is we could have like a command line tool in the cluster EDM. So today we have a cluster EDM join command that you need to input like the API server or the hub API server and something like the bootstrap token, etc. No, just the hub API server. Yeah, and the bootstrap token. But in the CAPI case, we can do something like we don't need to go to the managed cluster to initiate this command. We can also go to the CAPI management cluster and run class ADM command with a CAPI flag. So then the class ADM command can help us to initiate for example, using the kubeconfig that is already in the CAPI management cluster or using the resource set to do that, to initiate the import. So this is the current idea I have, but it's just about like a way that we can auto register the cluster to the OCM when you have a CAPI management cluster. And I want to know if there's any other possible integration point we can have, or any other idea on how the integration between OCM and CAPI could also have.
I have a quick question. So do we expect the OCM management cluster and the CAPI management cluster it's on the same level, as in they're on the same cluster, or can they be different as well?
I think if we put it into the if we use a class ADM solution, maybe it is not necessary that the two cluster is the same. We just need to run the class ADM command in the CAPI management cluster. But the OCM hub can be in different cluster, but we choose like we want to have a controller on the OCM hub that is going to watch the cluster ETBI and auto import those clusters that has been provisioned by the cluster API. It might need the two management the management cluster of CAPI and hub, OCM hub is the same cluster.
I see. Thank you. The reason why I asked that question is, uh, I guess it's safe to say the cluster API has more users than OCM users. So
Mhm.
just imagine if I'm imagining myself having a cluster API environment and I want to try out OCM,
Mhm.
but I don't, I don't want to. How do I don't want it to interfere in my current existing cluster API management plane. So
Yeah.
if I like, this is where I would really like to leverage the multi-cluster control plane or the standalone control plane or the mini OCM.
Mhm.
And if then I can just insert something fast into my management, my current CAPI management control plane, and then because that's just a pod or whatever running on its own namespace, then once I'm done with it, at least like just for testing out the integration, right? I can just get
Yeah.
rid of that. Then that will give me a quick way of seeing how that integration goes. So that's just another idea that I'm suggesting. I feel like that might help a little bit, but I'm just because it won't
Yeah.
interfere too much with the existing CAPI management controller. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's a great point.
So if they are different clusters and we want to importing the CAPI provisioned cluster
Mhm.
into the OCM hub automatically, should we get the kubectl config from the CAPI cluster back to the OCM hub?
Um, Probably, I think if we have a cluster EDM command, something like cluster EDM join
Mhm.
dash cappies, something like that. It won't be like automatically. It will be something like when you run the command, probably it could be like the command will check all the CAPI clusters in the in the management cluster of the CAPI and just import the existing CAPI clusters that in this management cluster. If another one join later, we probably need to run this command again.
Okay, got it.
That's one option, but yeah, but that may be more flexible, but not that automatic.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, do we consider to use the class ADM to install the CAPI control plan?
Uh, I'm not sure. I think that will be quite complicated because CAPI control plane has initiate CAPI control plane already has another command line called um, cluster CTL. So to install so for example, you need to set you could use cluster CTL init to initiate a control plane, and with a different infrastructure, you need to specify the different infrastructure like AWS or Google, etc. But before that, also we need to set up some kind of the environment variable. For example, for the AWS case, we need to set the access key, access token, etc. to ensure that this command is working. There's also some pre-requirement for the different platform, like in AWS case, we also need to run the cluster AWS ADM command to initiate some IAM policy to ensure the whole provider can work. That's quite specific for the CAPI use cases, and then there are a lot of different use cases for different providers. So I'm not sure how Class ADM can handle that. Maybe, yeah, maybe just to a wrapper of the cluster CTL, but that seems not quite generate more values for us.
Okay, so yeah, for me, I'm not sure the real use case how we need to integrate with the CAPI, because if we don't integrate the class CTL or something, we just continue use the class CTL to init the cluster and then use the class ADM to join that cluster to the control plane. So I think that is a very simple or a case we already supported.
So one option that the first options that I discussed, I raised before about like having a controllers in the OCM that help to auto detect the CAPI clusters and auto import those clusters. For that, it is possible that we don't need to rerun the cluster ADM command for each CAPI clusters. It is possible that the user just need to initiate the OCM hub, and then the only thing that the user need to do is to use the cluster CTL command to start a CAPI clusters, and OCM can auto detect this cluster and automatically register this cluster to the OCM hub.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
That's a more automatic integration, but that will require that somehow the OCM hub and management cluster of CAPI is the same cluster, or somehow you can set the OCM hub to know which is the management cluster of CAPI.
Okay. Do we yeah, I'm not sure. Do we consider do it in the reverse way? I mean that class CTL can initiate some cluster, but there is no management tools. So can we do some integration in the CAPI side to integrate the OCM?
So CAPI has some kind of a feature like called resource set. So you can use a resource set to sync some resources to the cluster provisioned by CAPI. And one part, so the option that you can do is that you can define a resource set, and when the cluster is provisioned, create a resource set on the for the certain cluster, and then it is registered to the OCM hub. But that will, I think that we actually, so I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but would you, one option, another direction that you wanted that we don't do anything in the OCM part, but just to document that you can use this resource set to kind of register to the OCM hub.
Yeah, I mean that can we do some contribution or proposal in the CAPI side to let the CAPI to integrate with the OCM? Because I think that the capability of OCM can be provided more capability than the resource set in the CAPI.
The resource set doesn't have to be just about register cluster too, right? I mean, we can have it to resource set to set up a hub. So if someone create a cluster, the first cluster is the hub, and then the first resource set is just setting up the OCM management plane, and then
Yes.
go from there. is that kind of an integration that Changlin you
Yes.
refer?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't. So that's a good point. I haven't thought about like, yeah, maybe we should also take a look at whether there's any other kind of integration point we can have in the CAPI, or enhance the CAPI to like, somehow define some kind of initiate script to initiate when the cluster is provided, it can initiate the OCM hub or OCM managed cluster.
Or is OCM add-on a considerable way to integrate with CAPI? Not sure.
Sorry?
I mean, can we use OCM add-on to integrate with CAPI to develop a?
So that's something like you can create a managed cluster and make it as a management cluster of the CAPI?
Something like that.
It is possible, I think. Yeah, that's. Oh, it's yeah, that's I think that is possible. That will be quite similar as with what we did with Hypershift, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the newly joined clusters will be added to the hub, but the hub is on the add-on management cluster. Is that how it is? Just Zhujian?
Yeah.
Okay. But then that hub is not the same hub as the upper hub. Yeah. Or it's not, right? Because that's one of the add-on hub.
I think it could be the same one, and it could be different hubs.
Okay. Oh, it's like a local cluster,
Yeah.
like an add-on for a local cluster, then it becomes the same.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. And QJing's way is just like shift.
Yes.
But then we have to worry about installing the CAPI, right? Like the setting up the yeah, that part is I don't know. I'm not too familiar with deploying CAPI.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, I think. Okay, yeah, I think we got some very good point. I will try. I think there's an issue about the CAPI. I will capture this point in that issue, and yeah, I think I will. Yeah, I will put also share the issues into the Slack channel and see if there's another idea. And see. Maybe next time we could decide what's the next step that we really should do.
Oh, just another quick brainstorm idea. So
Mhm.
the CAPI cluster API, usually they ask for provider to implement the API, right? So that they can, reconcile and then provision the cluster. Is it
Yes.
possible that we hack something like that? We gave a OCM provider, and then when we have that provider, we'll create a cluster that is OCM cluster. Maybe I'm not making any sense, but yeah, I'll add that another idea in that issue once I think about it more.
Okay. Yes. So so CAPI is like you have a common API in the cluster. The cluster API is a common API that no matter so for different providers, it all have this API, and it has different object reference for the different providers. For the AWS, would be like there is two reference. One is to the control plane, and control plane means the master. I mean the API server, SCD, etc. Another one is infrastructure, which is kind of the node or the kubelet node on the Kubernetes clusters. So this object reference is going to reference to the specific implementations of the different cloud providers. For AWS, it is AWS managed control plane. For GKE, it could be Google managed control plane, etc. So that's a main concept in the CAPI.
Right, but I'm just going off of Chenglin's idea, right? So instead of, for example, in this example you have, instead of AWS managed control plane, it'll be like AWS OCM managed control plane, and then it does all the AWS stuff, and then at the end it puts in our hub there as well, and then there you go. You have there's the integration from the cluster API side, something like that. Because there's controller and code in the back that's supporting these AWS managed control plane reference, right? So
Yes.
it will provide like a AWS OCM managed control plane, and then anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah, I think probably let's put some comments in the issue so we can keep on discussing on that. Cool. So any other questions or comments?
Hi, Xuxian. Actually, I a little bit like the ideas from Zhujian. I think maybe we can make some minor change. We can develop an add-on, for example, and discover add-on. It can be deployed to any existing managed clusters and watch any known CRDs like KP cluster or have class deployment
Mhm.
and report those cluster and import those cluster into the hub cluster. So we can even have this in SM or MCE.
Yeah, so you mean that we actually make the KP management cluster as a managed cluster of the OCM hub at first, and then you can
So we create add-on. The only task of this add-on is to find out all supported CRDs like the KP cluster and the hub class deployments. It will watch for those CRDs and find any instance of those CRDs. It can help to register those cluster into the hub cluster. We don't have to deploy anything, the KP control plan on those cluster, but it can discover existing provisioned KP cluster and import it into the OCM hub cluster. So in your option one, you actually want to run a controller on the hub. This controller will discover every KP cluster on the hub cluster.
Yeah.
So my idea, or Zhujian's idea, we can move this controller to the managed cluster of this hub. So it will running on the managed cluster and will discover all the KP cluster instance of those managed cluster and then register it to the hub cluster.
Yeah, I think I got this point. I think that makes sense. I just need but that will mean, so for example, if you have a KP management cluster at first, what you need to do is you need another OCM hub and then make the management cluster of KP as a managed cluster in that OCM hub, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that OCM hub can be hopefully the multi-cluster
Safe.
control plane, something small that's standalone. So that is, something quick to bootstrap and easier to get rid of just to test. Is it possible? And
Yeah, I
then,
think so.
and
I think
then
it's
now you still just have on the outside just the CAPI, and then you have the hub there, and then you just register to the hub.
Yeah, I think that is possible. We actually, in a multi-cluster control plane, we have a flag in the multi-cluster control plane that you can directly manage the cluster that is hosting the multi-cluster control plane. So then you can enable the add-ons. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point. I will try to record it on the issue, and we can then discuss more on that. But Yana, I like this idea. It seems quite possible to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Qujang. Thank you everyone that contributed to the discussion. We still have 5 minutes left, so I just want to quickly discuss. Someone brought up a a topic in our Kubernetes Slack. So he's trying to use the add-on template, and he's wrapping whatever it is. In his case, the Argo CD application. So when a newly registered managed cluster comes on, he wants the add-on to be deployed there. But before the automatic install, he wants to have some custom value specific to that managed cluster. For example, with the managed cluster name or whatever. Is that possible to do? Do you guys have any idea how that's achievable?
So it depends on what customized values they need. So there are some predefined custom values that you can set in the add-on template. For example, the cluster name is a predefined customized value that user can define the add-on template. So if the add-on is enabled in a different clusters, that cluster name is picked. But it's not that flexible. Like it is only cluster name. I'm not sure whether there's others. So Zhujian, do you know in addition to cluster name, is there any other variable that is per cluster? Oh.
Seems no. So there comes a requirement when deploying the add-on. If we can read some value from the managed cluster annotation or labels, so it is possible to implement this. Yeah.
So maybe labels is a possible way that, I mean, label and annotation is something that we can add.
Yeah, there's an issue created, so it's a requirement we can enhance this in the future.
Got it. But it's not something that we support right now, right? Roughly. So,
Right.
Okay. And
So there's another one called add-on deployment config. But it's not quite like that automatic. For example, you have to, if you want the per cluster configurations, they need to like create the add-on deployment config in each cluster namespace. And when you create a managed cluster add-on, you need to specify the add-on deployment config in the managed cluster add-on in the same namespace, so that that config can be picked. That could be per cluster. But in the install strategy, I don't think there's a way to automatically pick those kind of per cluster config.
I understand. So there's no way currently to use the automatic install strategy. User will have to manually create the managed cluster add-on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Got
the
it.
once the requirement, the enhancement of reading annotation labels on the managed cluster feature implement it, so it's possible to use in the automatic installs feature, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sujan. Thank you, Kujan. Thank you, Jujian. That's all the question I have. Anyone with any other questions topic? If not, see you in 2 weeks. Thank you all. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.